Learning how to code randomly without a clear path is going to take away months and years of your life, and that's a huge problem because time is our most valuable asset. It's the one thing that once it's gone, you can't get it back. And so, in this video, I'll tell you exactly step by step how to avoid this problem and learn without wasting any time. This is the conclusion of me learning for 5 years a lot of stuff in CS, including mobile apps development, backend, front end, and AI engineering. And so, I'll break down everything so that you can learn as fast as possible and in the most efficient way possible. So let's just jump right into it. This video is going to be so helpful and it's gonna have like a huge value. Okay, so the first thing when it comes to how to code, we need to talk about what. Okay, so we need to talk about what to learn. Okay, then we're gonna talk about how to learn it, and then we're gonna talk about AI's effect on learning in 2026 and actually in the next couple of years. Okay, so first thing when it comes to what to learn, what you need to do as a beginner is to pick a niche. Okay, that's the most important thing, and you aren't just gonna pick a niche, but you're gonna pick a niche and you're gonna stick to it for 6 months. Okay, this is so crucial. This is so important. Okay, most beginners fail because what they do is that they move around between fields, and so they do a bit of Python and then C++ and then probably get into front end and then back end, and so they end up without any skills and they become masters of none. We don't want to do this. We don't want to waste 6 months of your life without having any skill. What we want to do is that we want to pick a niche and stick to it for 6 months. Okay, now the question is how to pick a niche, and that's a great question. And the thing is that people always obsess over finding the perfect niche. Meanwhile, the perfect niche doesn't exist. Okay, if you realistically want to find the perfect niche for yourself, what you need to do is that you should try every niche that exists on earth for 6 months, and obviously this is not viable. Okay, and so what you need to do is you need to look for niches. Okay, so you can look for DevOps, front end, back end, mobile apps development, and you're gonna look at them in a very superficial way. Okay, and so just in a very superficial way, do I want to work in this field? Do I like it? Does it seem likable to me? Okay, even in a very superficial way. But people might say this might be a waste of time. If I just like pick a niche and then I see that I don't like it, that's gonna be considered as a waste of time. And the thing is that this isn't a waste of time at all. When I first started, okay, I learned mobile apps development, worked as a mobile developer for a while, then out of curiosity learned backend, and then out of curiosity learned AI engineering, worked as an AI engineer for a while, and eventually I decided to get into front-end development and stick to it. Okay, would I consider the 3 years that I spent learning mobile apps development, backend, AI engineering a waste of time? Of course not, because I learned a ton. Okay, and so the most important thing is to learn, because when it comes to software and computer science, all fields are similar and they have a lot in common. And so if you are so good at one field, it's going to be a piece of cake to transition into any other field. And so if you're so good at front end, you can transition to back end easily. If you're so good at back end, you can transition into front end easily, and so on. Okay, so I think that's everything I have about what to learn. So we said we're gonna pick a niche, we're gonna stick to it for 6 months, and the way we choose a niche is in a very superficial way. We just look at all the fields available and we say, let's just pick this because it seems likable to me. Okay, and we're gonna stick to it for 6 months. If you're looking for the fields that are available that you might get into, they are front end development. I'm not gonna get into them all. Okay, I'm just gonna give you a brief look on what are the fields that you might choose from. So we have front end, we have back end. Okay, I'm not gonna define them. I'm not gonna talk into too much details right now. We may leave that for another video. You have mobile apps development. Okay, you have DevOps. Excuse my awful writing. You can have AI engineering. Okay, so these are the most common fields that you might find. Some of them are beginner friendly, some are not. For instance, AI engineering isn't beginner friendly at all, because before you even start writing a single line of code in AI engineering, you need to learn a ton of math. So you need to learn algebra, calculus, probability, and statistics. And so AI isn't so appealing to beginners. If you're looking for the most beginner friendly field in those, is gonna be front end development. This is the most beginner friendly field among them all. And by the way, if you're interested in learning front end development, check out the first link in the description below. This is my front end ninja to one-on-one tutoring program. You can check it out if you want to break into tech without spending a fortune on bootcamps. Okay. Anyways, let's move on to the second point, and this is a very, very important point. Please give your full attention to what I'm gonna say, which is how to learn. Okay, how to learn coding. So the way you learn coding is the way you learn anything else in life, and I'm going to tell you the method exactly. And this method is used to learn anything, not just coding, but anything from how to drive a car to getting a PhD. Okay, and the method works as following. What you need to do first is that you need to get knowledge. Okay, so the first thing is getting knowledge, and then you need to practice. Okay, and then you do what? You repeat. Okay, so this is how you learn any skill in life. You get knowledge, then you practice, then you repeat, and so on. Okay, so the first question here is how to get knowledge. Okay, let's get into it. The way you get knowledge is by asking questions, right? Makes sense. In order to get knowledge, you need to ask questions, and you need to ask as many of them as you can. And so let's say that I want to learn HTML. Okay, the first question that should come to your mind is, what is HTML? And so I look for what is HTML on the internet. Then the next question is, how can I create my first HTML file? Then how can I write my first line of code in HTML, and so on. Okay, but doing that on your own is going to be so hard. And so what you need to do is that you need to find a knowledge. Oh my god, my writing is so awful, but anyways, just I think you understand what I mean. What you need to do is that you need to find a knowledge source. Okay, and knowledge sources are the following. As a beginner, your knowledge sources are going to be first courses, okay, and then blogs, and then AI. Okay, so courses is the most beginner friendly source. Okay, we have two more, which are books and docs, but these are kind of advanced. These three are the most that you're gonna use as a beginner. So what you need to do is that you can pick a course as your knowledge source, and as you're going through the material of the course, you're gonna apply the asking questions method. And so the instructor on the course is going to be answering a lot of questions, but you need to come up with your own, because courses don't include everything. Okay, so how to pick a course? Well, you just pick a course randomly. Okay, also people always are obsessed over finding the perfect course. Meanwhile, the perfect course doesn't exist. And just think about it, spending 6 months learning a course that's a bad course is going to be way better than spending 6 months doing nothing. Okay, so just pick one course. Okay, the perfect course doesn't exist, and stick to this course until you finish it. Okay, and as you're going through the course, you're going to ask questions, and when you ask those questions, you can use blogs to answer those questions for you. Okay, and so you're going through some course, let's say a Python course, and the instructor talks about functions, but you don't quite understand them, and so you need to ask a question. What are functions? Why do they exist? And so on. And then you search about the questions that come to your mind, and you go to blogs to answer those. Okay, now that we're in 2026 in the age of AI, you can also use AI as your knowledge source, but with a grain of salt. If you're gonna ask me to give you an advice, I will advise you that you don't use AI at all because that's how I learned and built a very good fundamentals in software engineering, and that's how every single software engineer did like from 5 years ago. But if you are willing to use AI, what you need to do is that um, you need to do what I call the 50 minutes rule. Okay, the 50 minutes rule, anyways, just don't care about my alpha writing. The 50 minutes rule is like when you face a problem, you're gonna fight and struggle for at least 50 minutes. Could be 30 minutes, could be 45 minutes, depending on the person's tenacity. But you're gonna spend a while before you ask AI for help. Okay, and this is so crucial because as a beginner, the most important thing that you need to do is trying to solve problems, not solving problems. If you get the problem solved using AI, you haven't learned anything. Okay, as a beginner, don't care about solving the problem. The whole purpose of problems as a beginner is to try to solve them, not solve them. Okay, so now we've talked about how to learn and we talked about getting knowledge. Okay, so how to learn, you get knowledge, then you practice, then you repeat. We talked about how to get knowledge, and that's by asking questions. And in order to ask questions easily, you need to have a knowledge source. This knowledge source could be a course, could be blogs, could be AI. And so you're gonna go through a course, and you're gonna ask questions, as many of them as you can. And while you're asking questions, you're gonna look for blogs to help you answer those questions. You can use AI to help you out, but you should apply the 15 minutes rule or 30 minutes rule. And the way you do that is that you face a problem, you try to solve it for at least 15 minutes, and when you give up, you ask AI for help. You don't ask AI for help immediately. Okay, so we talked about getting knowledge, okay, in how to learn. Now we need to talk about practice. Okay, so let's talk about how to practice because this is so important, and a lot of people get this wrong. When you practice, what you need to do is that you want to find a tutorial. Okay, and once you find a tutorial, what you do is you gonna practice with this tutorial, and you just don't stop here. If you stop here, you're gonna fall into the so-called tutorial hell. Okay, if you want to learn how to drive a car, watching videos of people driving car all days won't do you any good. You need to drive yourself. And how to drive yourself, this is so tricky. Okay, well, you're gonna watch a tutorial, okay, and you're gonna practice with the tutorial. And so the person is gonna say, do this and you do this, then do that and you do that, okay? But you don't stop here. Once the tutorial is finished, what you need to do is you need to start building the project from scratch on your own, okay? This is so important. Okay, when you start building the project on your own, chances are you're not gonna build it 100% successfully, okay, because you're not that good yet. And so what you need to do is you go back to the tutorial, okay, and you see how the person solved the problem, and then you go back and solve it yourself, and so on. You do that over and over and over again until you can build the project on your own. This is crucial. Okay, please give attention to that if you want to practice very well without wasting time and without falling into the tutorial hell trap. What you need to do is that you find a tutorial, okay, then you practice with the instructor or the person who's doing this tutorial, and then when the tutorial ends, you try to build the project on your own. While building the project, you're gonna get stuck, and so you will get back to the video and see how the person solved the problem. That's how you practice very well without falling into the tutorial hell trap. Okay, I think that's everything that I had for this video. I hope that it's helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and always remember, Omar's all you need. Goodbye.